Another day in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. And today, the judge threatened to throw Diddy out of the courtroom because he was repeatedly nodding to what the judge believed was towards the jurors during testimony. Also, a new alleged victim has come forward and is testifying about what happened at the freak-offs. So how are things looking for Combs so far? I'm criminal trial attorney Sara Azari, and this is Serving Justice, where we take a deep dive into what really matters in a criminal trial, the defense. I want to bring in NewsNation reporter Safia Samee, who's following the trial very closely, and also NewsNation field producer Tommy Christaldi, who was inside the Manhattan courtroom today. So Tommy, I want to start with you. The judge has had it with Sean Diddy Combs. He is saying that he's repeatedly admonished him not to look at the jurors and nod, and he keeps doing it. You were there, you saw what happened. Tell us about what the vibe was in this courtroom. And is the defense really taking this seriously?
Well, first of all, I think that throughout this trial, the judge has been a very chill guy. He's been very polite to people on both sides. And this was certainly the angriest that I've seen him. The tone that he took, I was taken aback. I was quite surprised because I have noticed Diddy nodding throughout the trial. It's difficult from where we're seated in the courtroom. You can never really find a seat where you have a view of Sean Combs and a view of the witness and a view of the jury. So I've had to kind of pick and choose what it is I'm trying to look at. I've noticed him nodding plenty. I've never necessarily noticed it directed right at the jury, although there have been times when I've noticed that he's been looking at either the prosecutor or the defense attorney who's speaking, and I guess it's totally possible that he could be looking beyond them to where the jury is seated. I think, though,
that's sort of what I think. I'm not there, obviously, but I can see why a defendant would be nodding when testimony seems to be going his way, like this brutal cross-examination of Bonner, for example. He's like, yeah, right on. I get that, right? But like looking at the jury and nodding doesn't make any sense to me. Like he's not winking. He's not really, what is nodding communicating? What do you think, Safia?
I mean, I think that he's known to be a charismatic guy. He knows he's popular. So I think he kind of turned over and was like, you feel me? Like, you get it? And so I think he was trying to use the charm that he's kind of known to have. So I think that's what he was doing. It caught the judge's eye and obviously didn't bode well for him. And that's done now.
I don't want to say, I don't want to downplay this because it was certainly a serious moment in court and it was a big deal. And actually, I was in the overflow room today and most people had already left because most people leave when the jury's dismissed. But I was still sitting in there and I looked at one of the other reporters I was with and said, it would be super crazy if this turned into a big thing and we were the only two people in the room to hear it, which, we were not. There were more people. And obviously news got out, as I saw by the time I left court. But I do just want to say, one of the things that the judge said first was, if this happens, I will need to give the jury a curative instruction. And you wouldn't want that. It was like he was admonishing a little kid. He was talking to Mark Agnifilo. He said, you wouldn't want that, would you? And of course, Agnifilo kind of shrunk a little bit and said, no, I wouldn't, Your Honor. So then after that is when he said, and if it continues, I might bar your client from being in the courtroom. I don't necessarily.
And listen, can he do that? Absolutely, because the judge's role is to preside over a trial, ensure that it's a fair trial, and ensure an orderly courtroom, including not having any influence over jurors. So he absolutely can do that. But what's crazy is that he would also be making a very strong record for an appeal, because that is in direct conflict with the Confrontation Clause and the Sixth Amendment. This is a defendant that, according to you, Tommy, and your brilliant reporting, is constantly, speaking to his lawyers. He's whispering, he's writing notes, he's very engaged. He's not just participating in his defense. He's really, really engaged. So by removing him, that's just yet another great issue on appeal, that his Sixth Amendment rights was violated. I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting issue because a judge has the power to remove him, but it opens the door to a very strong appellate issue, in my opinion.
And I've found it kind of interesting, and maybe, you've done trials before. Maybe you can tell me how standard this is. Something that I've almost felt is that Sean Combs is kind of directing this whole thing. Whenever one of his attorneys comes down, they don't talk, Mark Agnifilo is the lead defense attorney in this case. They don't talk to him. They go to Diddy first. and they'll talk to him afterwards, but their questions are for Sean Combs first in a way that maybe it's just that I haven't spent a ton of time in a courtroom, but that stood out to me as.
So are they part of the enterprise that Combs is the mob boss?
I don't know that I'm saying that, but
the attorneys are his Confederates. They like go to. I mean, I'm just joking, but I think that here's what I think. I get the sense that he's confident in his defense. He thinks that his lawyers are doing a good job at poking holes in the prosecution's case. He likes the way the case is going. Maybe he's even optimistic that he's going to at least hang the jury, or if not, get a not guilty. But I also think it's important to know that nobody knows their case better than the defendant. Nobody. We study the case, we spend time with the client, we get to know the facts, we investigate, we hire an investigator, we interview witnesses, we do all those things. And obviously this defense team is very prepared. Every person has their specific role. We talked about Nicole Westmoreland being the eviscerator yesterday. Everyone has a very specific role, but nobody knows these people testifying better than Diddy does. Nobody knows their weaknesses. Nobody knows the facts of specific incidents that they're testifying to. So I think it's really, really critical that he be in that courtroom, that he stops the judge from taking action. Whatever he's doing, I don't know which direction he's nodding, but he needs to stop it, because I think this is a very grave consequence for someone like him, who is visibly directing his lawyers.
I just have a quick question for Tommy, Sarah. How was Diddy's demeanor after all of this? Like, was he like super stiff and like super serious after? Like, I'm just curious. Like, did he do like a 180?
Yeah, I tried to keep an eye on him. I mean, my biggest concern, especially when I'm sitting in the overflow room, is taking down the notes of everything that's said. So I can't say that I had eyes on Diddy 24/7, but what I will say is that I didn't notice any nods afterwards, and I certainly noticed some before. So I'm not saying that it didn't happen, but I'm sure that he received a talking to, and I'm sure that he is going to be a little bit more locked in going forward, because it would be absolutely devastating if he was barred from the courtroom. I don't think.
Listen, I'm nodding. I'm nodding, listening to you guys, because I'm agreeing with you guys. I think it's a natural response. Like, he's going, yeah, this chick is lying. He's nodding. I don't think it's at the jurors, but hey, I'm not there, and I don't know. I do think, though, we definitely need to discuss another very important witness. I believe this should be the last of the prosecution's alleged victims, who was put on the stand. Her name she's going by Jane Doe. And I want to go to Safia on this. What did we learn from her testimony? She talked about how she met Diddy, that he was dating her friend, and then they started dating. But then she got into freak-offs, right?
She did. And you kind of there was a pattern that you could sense, from similar to what Cassie Ventura, when she was testifying. I mean, she said the same thing. They met in 2020, and that he was very romantic in the beginning, and it was very magical, and that she said she was headed over heels pretty quickly. And then it all changed months later when he suggested that they open up their relationship to a male escort. And she said that at the time she said yes, kind of didn't want to, but said yes because she wanted to make him happy. But then after that, it was a door, she said, that you couldn't close at. And she referred so it was freak-offs with Cassie Ventura. For Jane, she said he called them, quote, hotel nights. So they seem to be the same sexual events, but they were called hotel nights in the case of Jane. So she said these hotel nights would go on for days at a time. There was a lot of baby oil involved, very similar to Ventura again. They would go on all the time, where every time she would see him, it would be set up the same way. There was a director, an escort would come in, the lights would be a certain way, he'd want her to dress a certain way. And so, yeah, and then she said she didn't want to, but kind of did it anyway. And also, one thing to note is that by this time, she said he was paying her rent and was giving her money. So she wasn't really working. So there was kind of a similar power exerted over her. And I think at one point, Tommy let me know, she told him that she didn't want to do it. And he said, then I'm not paying your bills, essentially. Like, I'm not paying your rent if you don't do it. So, yeah, I mean, she just got into it, and it's going to get definitely a lot more intense tomorrow.
You're a woman. I'm going to direct this to you. I mean, do you not have a problem with this? You've got a man paying your rent. When I grew up, my mom said, there's no free lunch. There is no free lunch. So if a man's going to buy you stuff, pay your rent, pay for your child, you're paying somehow, right? And if you don't want to pay that way, you leave. I just have a problem with this. I have a problem with someone who willingly engages in whatever is asked of her because she's being supported. And it's not just her rent. She was going to Turks and Caicos. She was going to the Bahamas. I think there's going to be a real conversation that the defense is going to have with this jury about the dazzle and the lifestyle that Sean Combs was synonymous to for these women, whether it was their career, whether it was their livelihood, whatever it was. These are grown adults. This is not R. Kelly with minors, right? These are grown women who chose to accept these things, to sign up for this lifestyle and please him. I just don't see coercion in that. And you know what? People on the jury could. I just don't. I just feel very strongly about this. You're hanging out with this man. There's drugs involved. He's paying for stuff for you, and he likes this freaky lifestyle. You can leave, but you're not going to get all the other stuff. But that doesn't mean you're coerced to stay.
I mean, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying, but I think people's state of mind are there. It's very different. She was very in love with him. She thought she could have a future with him, and she just started getting deeper and deeper kind of in this and deeper, more and more enmeshed. And I think the deeper you get in something, the more dependent you get on something, the harder it is to get out. I'm not saying one way or the other, whether or not she was.
But that's not coercion. That's you sort of whatever for your own issues are, getting stuck in this situation that is a toxic, no good situation for you, but you're in it for some reason. It's almost like these women, if you step away and you listen to sort of the common denominator, it's almost like they wanted A, B, and C of Combs, but they didn't like the X, Y. I mean, A, B, and C, but they didn't want the X, Y, and Z. So because it was all or nothing, it was coercion.
And I think we're going to hear more about the coercion. I think we've just gotten the beginning. We're still talking about the honeymoon phase of their relationship. So I think that is going to come up.
Yeah. We're at the beginning. We're on week 4.
No, but from this witness in particular,
I see what you're
saying.
Yeah. Because I'm like, every day I'm like, okay, where's the conspiracy? Where's the enterprise? Where's the coercion? And then, like, as soon as someone comes up, like it happened with Bonna, I was like, oh, okay, this is someone who didn't have a relationship with them and was a victim of assault or violence. And then of course that unraveled. So every time I go, it's just like,
I think we're going to get into it. I mean, we've just kind of gone like with this witness, with Jane, we're still talking about their honeymoon phase. We're still talking about they're in love. And, she was with him up until his arrest from 2021 to 2024. So this is very recent information. So this is, I think that we still have a lot more to hear about from this witness. And I think the coercion and the abuse and other things that maybe you're looking for may come out.
And I think what's significant about 2021 to 2024 is that for the prosecution to be able to go back in time under the racketeering statute all the way to the beginning of time, including the 2016 predicate act of that hotel assault, right? They have to have an offense that occurred in the last 5 years. So by having that, that opens the door to go back another 10 years and then back another 10 years. So that's why this statute is so it's such a wild card for the government, is because, so long as you have the first 5 years, you could just keep rolling back 10 years, until the beginning of time. So it's interesting to me that this is whatever conduct she's going to testify to is between 2021 and 2024, clearly in the last 5 years. Tommy, the court's taking some steps to make sure that what happened with Mia doesn't happen to Jane Doe in terms of her identity not leaking. What are you able to tell us from sort of, what has shifted in the courtroom since Mia's identity was leaked, and what steps are being taken to protect her?
Well, I'm going to choose my words carefully because I'd hate to be the reason that we got kicked out of the courtroom. But the big difference is that in the overflow room and presented out to the members of the media and the public in the main courtroom, the monitor has been shut off. So this is the monitor that shows the exhibits. So, for example, when Jane Doe got onto the stand, she was presented with a photo of her driver's license just for the jury and the parties to identify, yes, I'm testifying under a pseudonym, but this is who I really am. Obviously, that was something that we weren't going to see. But then she got into text messages between her and Sean Combs, and we didn't get to see those. Mm-hmm. We got into when you said he was paying her rent. We saw an email, or we heard about an email between her landlord and his accountant and her, and we didn't get to see that email at all.
There's because her name was in there. Because her name was.
But we've seen redacted exhibits before. With Mia, we saw a whole bunch of text chains, and where her name would have been, it was blacked out, and Mia was written over it in white text. We're not even getting that this time. There was actually a pretty intense back and forth. There was an attorney in there on behalf of some news outlets earlier this morning saying, we need to be able to see these redacted exhibits, but we need the redacted exhibits now. It's unfair to have it turned off. And one of the agreements that was reached was anytime Jane is reading a text thread, Jane will read the texts aloud such that they will be entered into the transcript and immediately readily accessible, because the government is saying that they haven't had time to adequately redact the exhibits. And specifically, Maureen Comey said she wanted to be the one to do it because it's not just Jane's name. It's the name of Jane's kid. It's other identifying information you don't even realize. So they are really being as careful as they can be. Now, I suspect it's still not going to matter, unfortunately. I think that we live in an age where when there's something people want to find out, it's something people are going to be able to find out. And especially when you're in a relationship with someone as high profile as Sean Combs, it would not surprise me if as soon as this evening we saw on social media, hey, Jane Doe is so-and-so, but you won't be hearing me. I don't mean to derail this conversation. I don't know if you saw any of the sketches from today or heard about what Bono was wearing, but she came in an orange shirt and a black vest and she looked like a prisoner. And I just thought it was absolutely crazy, the choice of clothing that she would wear onto the stand to resume what was already a brutal cross-examination. I know we're going to get into that, but I was taken aback. And again, the thing about the overflow room is it's a bit more open to conversation, though they reprimanded us, not me personally, but the room as a whole a couple times today for talking too much. But when she came in, everybody kind of looked at each other and said, why would she wear this when things were already going so poorly for her? So that was just something, you want to talk about.
She's probably like, she's like, F it. They eviscerated me. I might as well.
Well, they kept going. They kept going.
And that's what I want to ask Safia before we close. What do you think? I mean, look, the defense is this whole balcony thing never even happened. It's a flat out lie. She colluded with Cassie right before, around the time she filed the 2023 lawsuit about like what really happened. And then, she doesn't remember, like Tommy said, I don't remember, I don't recall. Even something like she had spoken to the prosecutors a couple of days ago that she says she doesn't remember saying that. So very problematic in terms of credibility. But overall, do you think the jury is going to give any weight to what she said?
I would be surprised if they did.
Yeah.
I think nothing she said has been consistent. The way she's answered questions has been so questionable. And I think today the defense buttoned it up like nobody's business. I mean, they brought evidence that showed that Diddy wasn't even in the same city.
The metadata from her phone.
Yes, the phone. She alleged that this happened. The bruises, right? The picture of the bruises. They showed receipts from hotels and restaurants where he was in New York with Cassie. So that was that. I mean, definitely cut down the credibility. And then I think at one point, the defense attorney actually went up to this witness and said, you came here and lied to the jury, didn't you? And she answered, I don't agree with that.
That was, whenever she was cornered, she would just say, I can't agree with that. That was at the end of her cross-examination before the prosecution redirected and said, it really did happen, though. You just don't remember dates. I'm like, girl, please. Like,
they tried.
I think they tried.
They tried to salvage it. And I'll say, look, I left it thinking something probably happened on this balcony. You just made the unfortunate mistake of saying you were certain when it happened, and you were wrong, clearly. I don't understand how that is something that they could have overlooked when they were so excited about, here is the time-stamped photo.
Yeah.
How do you not check where one of the most Like, he's a public figure. You could have
Yeah.
known where he was. I don't
One of
know.
the, one of the worst forms of evidence is, I mean, it could be good or bad, obviously, but in this case, it was good. Is, text messages. Text messages don't lie. Video doesn't lie, and metadata certainly doesn't lie. I mean, I'm not even a forensic person. I right click on a document and I look to see when it was created. It's just not that difficult these days. So
I think
anyway,
they were really relying on that, right? Like
yeah.
they were pretty firm that timestamp and that metadata would just seal the deal for them. So I don't even know if they looked further into it, but I wish they had. I mean, for their sake, they should have.
Because I'll tell you something. Of course, they have other witnesses, and they're bringing in different people for different parts of this case, different elements. But at the end of the day, when you have one really bad witness like her, and then you have another kind of bad one like Dawn Richard, like that sort of puts a stain on your entire case, and so I just don't think they were that careful when they made a decision to have her testify, because that's just not a witness as a prosecutor that I would put up. I would think that was just going to discredit my case. But anyway, thank you, Safia and Tommy, and a big thanks to our viewers. We will be back tomorrow with more analysis of the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Please follow us and stay with NewsNation for more on this very important trial.